Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bookercast, the podcast where books come to life.
And I'm so excited to dive into another amazing story with all of you.
Whether you're a bookworm or just love a good story, this is the place for you.
Every episode, we explore incredible books, talk about their stories and characters, and share insights that'll make you fall in love with reading all over again.
All right, let's not keep you waiting any longer. Get comfortable, and let's jump right into it.
Sounds good.
Hey, everyone, welcome back. Today, we're going deep on Kaveh Akbar's Martyr.
Ooh, this one's gonna be good.
It is. Now, it's not your typical poetry collection, more like a novel told through all these fragmented narratives and poems.
Yeah, and that structure actually said a lot about what Akbar's trying to do.
Exactly. We're diving into the world of Cyrus Shams, our main character, using excerpts from the book itself. We'll look at his backstory, lines that just hit you in the gut, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So, ready to explore what it means to be a martyr in a world where faith, identity, even death itself can feel kind of fragmented.
Absolutely. And one of the things that struck me right away is how Martyr reflects the state of contemporary poetry itself.
How so?
Well, Akbar's pushing boundaries. Like you said, it's not a traditional collection. It mirrors the fragmented nature of, well, everything. Faith, identity, even death in our modern world.
Kind of like he's holding up a shattered mirror to our times.
Exactly. And through that, he's grappling with the weight of history, both personal and cultural. You see how it shapes individual lives. Take Cyrus, for example. He's fixated on martyrs, especially after losing his mother in that Iran Air Flight 655 tragedy.
Right, his mom, Roya. There's this intense internal conflict in Cyrus, drawn to the idea of dying for something meaningful, but he's also wrestling with addiction, this feeling of emptiness in his life. Are those two things even connected?
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? I think that's at the core of what Akbar's exploring. Cyrus is yearning for martyrdom. It's not just about faith. It's a deeper longing for connection, for belonging. He's looking for a purpose that resonates with his heritage, helps him transcend the ordinary.
And then there's his dad, Ali. He immigrated to the U.S. after the tragedy, built a life working on a chicken farm. And it's just stark contrast to Cyrus's desire for a grand narrative.
Totally. It's almost as if Ali represents this acceptance of fate, while Cyrus is desperately searching for something more.
You know what really got to me? There's this small detail about Ali, where it says he secretly taught himself SAT vocabulary words to sound more American.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's powerful. Speaks volumes about the complexities of assimilation, trying to blend in, become invisible. While his son, Cyrus, he's yearning to stand out, be recognized.
Yeah.
Even if it's, through death.
Akbar's use of language is incredible, by the way, especially his imagery. The recurring motif of water, for example, it's so powerful.
Right. Water symbolizing both life and death. You see it connecting to Roya's death in the plane crash and even Cyrus's own near-death experience.
Wait, hold on. Near-death experience, you mean when...
Yeah, the scene where he almost chops off his foot with an axe while high on fentanyl. Remember, he's working on his friend's farm, and it's like he's subconsciously acting out this urge for self-destruction, a warped desire for martyrdom, almost. The water washing away the blood, it becomes this potent symbol of cleansing, but also, the fragility of life.
It's like a visceral representation of his inner turmoil. And speaking of this yearning for connection, this need to escape the everyday, we see it reflected in other characters too, like Cyrus's friend Z. Their relationship is so complex, full of these unspoken desires, this shared sense of loneliness.
Totally. Z embodies how Akbar weaves these intricate relationships that mirror the novel's broader themes. It's a connection that goes beyond the physical, finding solace in a world that can feel isolating.
And then there's Orchida, the artist who's dying of cancer. She's living in the Brooklyn Museum for this performance art piece called Death Speak.
Which, Death Speak is already a loaded concept in itself.
Absolutely. And here's where it gets really interesting. Orchida, she knows about the Iran Air Flight 655 tragedy.
Yeah.
Even though Cyrus never told her how his mother died.
It's a pivotal moment, for sure. This seemingly impossible knowledge forces Cyrus to confront his romanticized view of martyrdom. He has to see the raw human cost of loss and grief.
Makes you wonder, how do we connect with others, especially in the face of death? What does it mean to really know someone's story?
It goes beyond individual connections, too. Akbar introduces us to a whole spectrum of figures, each grappling with their own forms of sacrifice. Cyrus is fascinated by figures like Bobby Sands, the IRA member who died on a hunger strike, and Kuai Yuan, that ancient Chinese poet who drowned himself in protest. And then there's his uncle Arash, an Iranian war veteran struggling with PTSD.
Wow, yeah. It raises this powerful question. Is enduring trauma, like Arash does, a form of martyrdom?
Makes you rethink your whole understanding of the word, right? Is martyrdom always tied to a specific cause? What even constitutes sacrifice? Akbar really pushes us to broaden our definition.
It makes me think about all the different ways people dedicate themselves to something bigger than themselves, a political movement, religious belief, or even just enduring hardship.
Exactly. And in doing so, he highlights the universality of that human search for meaning. He's drawing these parallels between all these figures from different cultures, different eras, as if to say this desire to sacrifice, it transcends specific beliefs.
Okay, so we've got this exploration of faith, identity, the many faces of martyrdom, but there's also this concept of death speak, both as this art installation and this metaphor for how we deal with mortality.
It's like Akbar is saying, look, we're all surrounded by death, by the stories and experiences that shape how we understand life, its limitations. But it's not just about the big, dramatic deaths. It's the quiet, everyday losses, too.
You're thinking of Sang Lin, right? Orchid as art dealer. Vietnamese refugee who's also experienced such immense loss. Their shared experiences, this trauma and resilience, it creates a connection that goes beyond their individual stories.
Absolutely. And there's this subtle detail. I love Sang Lin's the one who actually named the Death Speak exhibit.
Whoa, I didn't even catch that. It adds this whole other layer of connection between them. Like she's recognizing the power of art to confront death, to give voice to the unspoken.
And ultimately, that's what Martyr does, too. Uses poetry, stories, fragments of lives to explore how we find meaning in a world where death is this inevitable thing, and certainty is elusive. One of the things that makes Martyr so captivating, I think, is just how Akbar uses language. He creates these vivid images, metaphors that really stay with you.
Yeah, it's like he's painting with words, creating all these layers of meaning that you kind of peel back with every reading.
Yeah.
And there's this rawness, this honesty in his voice that makes you feel like you're really experiencing these struggles right alongside the characters.
Absolutely. It's not just the beauty of the language itself, but the emotional depth he's able to convey. Do you remember those lines from one of the poems? My God, I just remembered that we die.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Such a simple statement, but it hits you like a ton of bricks.
Right. It captures that universal fear, that sudden awareness of our own mortality. And Akbar, he doesn't shy away from those dark, uncomfortable feelings. He explores them with this vulnerability that's, I don't know, unsettling, but also strangely comforting at the same time.
Yeah, I get that. For me, that vulnerability is super intertwined with the themes of faith and spirituality that run throughout the novel. Like that scene where Cyrus is talking to his sponsor, Gabe, in the coffee shop. He's really wrestling with the idea of a higher power, trying to reconcile his desire for meaning with the, seeming randomness of life and death.
And Gabe challenges him on that, right? He pushes Cyrus to figure out what he truly wants from life. It's like he's saying, look, you can't just chase martyrdom blindly without understanding why, without facing your own inner demons.
That really resonated with me. The idea that seeking meaning and grappling with personal struggles are like two sides of the same coin. And I love how Akbar brings in all these different perspectives on faith. It's not just about Islam.
You're right. There are references to historical figures from various cultures, religions, Bobby Sands, ancient Chinese poets. It highlights how the search for meaning is this universal human experience.
Yeah, totally. And that universality extends beyond religion, too. Like with Cyrus's fascination with Bobby Sands, who died on a hunger strike for Irish independence, it's like he's expanding the definition of martyrdom beyond just a religious act. It can also be a human act of defiance, this deep commitment to a cause.
And that defiance is often intertwined with personal struggles, too. Remember how Cyrus describes Ali, his father, meticulously learning SAT vocabulary words to assimilate into American culture?
Right. There's this profound sadness there, a sense of loss that lingers beneath the surface, almost as if he's trying to erase himself, disappear into the background.
It really makes you think about the cost of assimilation, doesn't it? Is it always a process of loss? What parts of ourselves do we sacrifice to fit in?
That's a heavy question. And it's not just Ali who carries that weight. We see this theme of loss reflected in other characters, too. Orchid facing her mortality. Sang Lin rebuilding her life after fleeing Vietnam.
Each character is marked by loss, yet they find these ways to persevere, to find beauty and meaning even in the darkest of times.
It's like Akbar showing us that even in the face of death, life goes on. And we, as humans, we find ways to cope, adapt, create new narratives for ourselves.
Speaking of narratives, remember Cyrus's friend Z? He's a writer, too. Their conversations about storytelling, about how we use language to make sense of the world, those are some of my
Oh,
favorites.
for sure. There's that scene where Z's describing how every song he hears, every flower he sees, feels like it's about him. He's experiencing this heightened reality where everything is super personal and symbolic.
Right. It's such a vivid example of how our experiences shape our perception. We project our own emotions, anxieties onto the world around us.
And that ties back to the power of art, of language, to transform our understanding of reality. Akbar doesn't just tell us a story, he creates an experience. He takes us on this emotional journey that forces us to confront our own fears, desires, and search for meaning.
And he does that through the novel's structure, too, jumping between timelines, characters, perspectives.
Exactly, like he's mirroring the fractured nature of our own lives, how memories, experiences often come to us in pieces, out of order. It's up to us to piece it all together.
And as we do that, these recurring themes emerge. Longing, loss, and this search for transcendence. Ultimately, that's what Cyrus is seeking, isn't it? Escape from the mundane limitations of his own life.
But it seems like true meaning isn't found in those big, grand gestures or heroic acts. It's found in the complexities of our human connections, the messy, everyday realities.
That's what makes Martyr so relatable, I think. We've all had those moments where we question our purpose, where we feel lost, disconnected. Akbar gives us permission to embrace that uncertainty, to find beauty in the brokenness.
It's a powerful message. Even in a world that often feels meaningless, we have the power to create our own meaning.
Yeah.
But it's not always easy, is it?
No, it's not. Akbar definitely doesn't shy away from the pain, the struggle, the frustration of trying to make sense of a world that often feels senseless. But what he ultimately offers is a sense of hope, a belief that even in the darkest of times, there's something worth fighting for, worth living for, worth dying for.
You know what keeps coming back to me? Orchida's decision to live her final days in the Brooklyn Museum as part of the Death Speak exhibit. It's such a bold, defiant act.
Right. It's like this confrontation with death, but also a celebration of life. Instead of hiding away, she's making her mortality a public spectacle, inviting us to engage with this uncomfortable reality of our own finite existence.
Makes you think about your own legacy, doesn't it? What will you leave behind? What stories will you tell? What impact will you have on the world?
And it's not about achieving fame or recognition, right? It's about those small, everyday moments. Connection, creativity, love. That's what makes life meaningful.
It's like Akbar's whispering to us. Even in a world that often feels meaningless, you have the power to create your own meaning. What struck you most about Akbar's use of language in this section?
For me, it was how he captured those fleeting moments of beauty and grace amidst all the darkness. Those little glimpses of hope that keep us going. How about you?
I was super moved by the conversation between Cyrus and Z. Their shared passion for writing, for using words to try and grapple with life's complexities. It felt so genuine, so relatable.
Yeah, those moments of connection, of shared passion, they definitely shine through.
And there's still so much more to uncover. In part 3 of our deep dive, we're going to explore the surprising twists and turns that Akbar throws our way. We'll delve even deeper into these characters' journeys and see how it all comes together. It's crazy how, throughout Martyr, Kaveh Akbar just keeps challenging what we expect. He takes these familiar ideas, martyrdom, faith, loss, and flips them completely, making us rethink everything.
Right, he's a master at that. You think you know where the story's going, and bam, he throws a curveball that shifts your whole perspective.
Speaking of curveballs, can we talk about the whole revelation about Cyrus's mom, Roya? The fact that she actually didn't die in the plane crash.
Whoa, yeah. It's like the whole foundation of the story shifts. Suddenly, everything we thought we knew about Cyrus, why he's so fixated on martyrdom, it all gets called into question.
Seriously, it's like the rug was pulled out from under us. If Roya didn't die, then what's been driving Cyrus this whole time?
And it's not just that she survived, right? She intentionally left her life behind, fled to the U.S., created a whole new identity for herself.
It's like she became a martyr to her own life, in a way. Sacrificing her past, her family, just for the chance at a fresh start. What kind of pain, what kind of desperation would lead someone to make that choice?
That question really hangs over the rest of the novel. And as we learn more about Roya, these fascinating parallels emerge between her and Cyrus.
Totally. They both share this deep yearning for escape, for something more. But Cyrus is chasing it through this idea of martyrdom, while Roya finds it through this self-imposed exile.
And even then, it's not like a clean break for her, She's still haunted by her past, by the guilt of leaving her family behind. Remember those scenes where she's wandering around New York City, stealing food and stuff, barely scraping by?
Ugh. It's heartbreaking. Makes you wonder if true escape is even possible. Can you ever really outrun your past?
Akbar doesn't give us easy answers, does he? And it's that ambiguity that makes Martyr so thought-provoking. He's not interested in neat resolutions or simple explanations. He gives us these messy, complicated lives and invites us to figure it out for ourselves.
And speaking of complicated, there's Arash, Cyrus's uncle, a war veteran who's obviously deeply scarred by what he went through in the Iran-Iraq War. He lives as a recluse, haunted by visions and memories from the battlefield.
Arach is such a powerful example of how Akbar deals with the theme of trauma. We see how war can shatter a person, leaving behind invisible wounds that last long after the actual fighting ends.
It's not just physical wounds either. It's the psychological, the emotional scars that are often the hardest to heal. Arash struggles to connect with the world, retreats into himself, looking for solace in his memories and his faith.
Makes you question the possibility of true recovery from trauma, right? Can you ever truly move on from that kind of profound loss and suffering?
Or is it something you carry with you always?
Exactly. And Akbar doesn't shy away from these tough questions. He uses Arash's story to shed light on the unseen wounds of war, the human cost that often gets overlooked.
And it's not about glorifying war or martyrdom at all. He's showing the devastating consequences, the ripple effects that touch not only the people who were directly involved, but their families, their communities.
And he does it with such sensitivity. He presents their stories without judgment, lets us come to our own conclusions.
One thing that's been on my mind is how Akbar brings together all these seemingly unrelated narratives. I keep thinking about how Cyrus is so fascinated by that story of Mozart transcribing Allegri's Miserere just from memory.
Oh, yeah. It's such a beautiful example of how art can break down barriers, how one single act of creation can inspire and influence people across generations.
It's like Akbar saying, we're all part of this bigger picture, connected by shared experiences, by our stories, our creativity.
And that picture is always changing, evolving, with each new generation, each new voice.
That's why Martyr feels so relevant today. It speaks to these universal themes of faith, identity, loss, searching for meaning in a world that often feels really chaotic and uncertain.
It's also a powerful testament to human resilience, to the strength we find in connection and creativity. Reminds us that even facing death, life still finds a way.
There's so many layers to this book. I feel like every time we come back to Martyr, new insights pop up, new connections are made. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what was it about Roya's story that resonated most with you?
It was her strength for me, her quiet strength. This ability to carve out a new path for herself despite all the loss and guilt she carried. What about you?
I keep coming back to that question of whether true escape is even possible. Made me think about my own life, times I've tried to run from my past, only to find it always finds a way to catch up.
And that's the power of Akbar's work. He makes us ask those hard questions about ourselves, about the world, about the mysteries of life and death that we're all trying to understand.
Martyr is a book that stays with you. It makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about life, death, and what it means to truly find meaning. Any final thoughts?
I think Akbar wants us to find our own death speak. Figure out what truly matters, how we want to live, what we want to leave behind.
It's a call to action. To face the big questions, embrace the messiness of life, and find those moments of beauty and connection that make it all worth it.
And to remember that even when the world feels fragmented and unsure, there's always something worth fighting for, worth living for, worth dying for.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Kaveh Akbar's Martyr. Hopefully our conversation sparked some thoughts for you, inspired you to explore this incredible novel. Until next time, keep reading and keep those conversations going.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Bookercast. We hope you enjoyed diving into it as much as we did. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. Your support means the world, and we can't wait to hear your thoughts on this episode.
Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and share this episode with your fellow book lovers. And let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you. See you in the next deep dive. Bye for now, and happy reading.